Hey there, I'm Scott the Winemaking Guy, and I'd like to welcome you to episode 9 of Help My Winemaking, the video podcast that helps people like you improve your winemaking savvy so you can make great tasting homemade wine your friends and family will rave about. Alright, so let's get started. On today's show, we've got Rocky Mountain update for all you skiers and snowboarders, kind of primary do you have, and finally why keeping an eye on the temperature in your wine must is important. Okay, so very quick Rocky Mountain update. I'm a volunteer ski patroller in the Canadian Rockies, and here are pictures of I believe it was the first weekend in November on Sunday. So, better conditions than mid-season last year, and it's going to be a great ski season. We were up there to practice our skills before the ski season started, and it's actually already started as of November 11th. And here I am, getting my fake broken humerus and fake twisted knee sorted out, and don't worry, it's like I said, it's all fake just for training, but at least you can see a picture of me giving the thumbs up. So hopefully if you're a skier or snowboarder, you'll have a great ski season this year as well. Okay, so let's talk about primary fermenters, because this is a question I just received. Thought I would pass it on to you. So Sherry asks, would you please set me straight? According to the company I purchased the wine equipment from, it had an article relating to the primary bucket. It stated if the bucket has a lid with a rubber grommet, it said do not use an airlock during the primary fermentation. The article stated the gases are so forceful an airlock would not be able to handle the pressure. If in your manual you stated to use an airlock, would you please set me straight on this? Okay, so the two main types of primaries are with an airlock and without an airlock. And with an airlock, incidentally, it also has a rubber grommet. Now, this is what I use. I got mine at Costco. It works perfectly fine. If you're going to use an airlock with this type of primary, just be careful that if your fermentation does get going really well, that you might get some bubbles coming out of your airlock. But really, if you keep an eye on it, it's not too much of a problem. The other primary that you might find out doesn't have a grommet, and it doesn't have an airlock, and it's basically a plastic lid that you just let sit on top of the bucket. You don't actually clamp it down. So what happens is they're designed so that they've got space around the outside that allows gases to come out and out the underside of this lid, and because there's positive pressure or gas coming out, it prevents gases from coming in, and it works just as well. Also, as the alcohol level in the wine must increases because of fermentation, it helps prevent spoilage of your wine must. So what I recommend you do, both work fine, but if you're curious to learn more, just go down to your local winemaking supply store and talk to the people who sell them, and they'll be able to offer an opinion, and you can form your own. And if you have an opinion on which one works better, I'd love to hear from you. So send me an email and give me your opinion. All right, thanks. So why keeping an eye on your temperature in your wine must is important? Well, temperature accounts for 90% of all winemaking problems. Did you know that? And here's why it's important. 4 reasons. 1, getting your fermentation started. 2, degassing your wine. 3, clearing your wine. And 4, aging your wine. So, for fermenting your wine, if you consider this yeast cell, it's got a rubbery outer surface. So it's the same thing as bacon fat. If you chill bacon fat, it becomes rubbery and kind of a bit of a goop. You put cold water on it, there's no way you're going to wash that pan out. Yeah, it's some warm water, it softens things up and gets things going. Same thing with yeast. If you already add yeast to cold water, nothing's going to happen because it doesn't soften up the outer layer, and the process won't get started. But if you add warm water, it softens things up, the yeast cell gets activated, and away it goes. So when you go pitching your yeast, also make sure that you read the instructions on the yeast, because some will want you to hydrate it before you pitch it, others will just want you to sprinkle it on the wine must. So pay attention to that. The other thing to keep into consideration is if you are going to hydrate your yeast before you pitch it, make sure that the water that you put it into matches the temperature. Sorry, the temperature of the water you put your yeast packet into, it matches the temperature of the wine must. Because if there's a big difference between the two, the temperature difference could kill the yeast, or at the very least slow the metabolism down. So you'll want to make sure that you pay attention to that. Okay, so hopefully that helps. Knowing that, it helps you from shooting yourself in the foot right from the beginning. All right. So degassing your wine. The golden rule of degassing your wine is really golden rule of temperature and gas. So think about it this way: if the amount of gas dissolved in your wine must is inversely related to the temperature of your wine must. Therefore, the colder your wine must is, the more gas will be trapped. On the opposite side, the warmer your wine must is, the more your gas will be expelled. So that's why they want you to make sure that your wine must is kept at a warm-ish temperature. So, to illustrate this, think of this little experiment. You have 2 cans of pop or soda, depending on whatever you call it, in your neck of the woods. You put one in your car on a warm day and the other one in the refrigerator. 2 hours later, you come and get that can of pop or soda out of your warm car. You open it up and it explodes. And then you go to pour it in a glass to drink it, and it's flat. You take that same can of pop or soda out of your refrigerator, pour it into a glass with ice, and you'll notice that it no problems and it's fizzy. Well, that's the same thing as your wine must. So if you have a warmer wine must, the gas will want to get out. If you have a colder wine must, the gas will want to stay in. Make sense? Now this relates to clearing your wine, because if you've degassed your wine properly, it won't be a problem. But if you haven't, gassy wines are difficult to clear because the gas will pull the fittings back into suspension. Cold wine will still trap gas no matter how hard or long you stir, and also gas will trap hydrogen sulfide gas in it, and that's where you get that rotten egg smell. So it does also affect how your wine smells and tastes. Okay, and finally, aging your wine. Well, you've heard this many times before. Keeping your wine at a consistent temperature during aging will ensure a better bottle of wine in the end. The ideal temperature to age your wine is 50 degrees Fahrenheit or 10 degrees Celsius, and that can vary 10 degrees plus or minus 10 degrees Fahrenheit or 5 degrees Celsius. The other thing to consider is you don't want big rapid changes in the temperature, so try to keep it at a consistent temperature, or at least let the temperature vary over a long period of time. Okay? The bottom line, as I said before, temperature causes 90% of winemaking problems. So that's why I wanted to talk to you about it today. So keys to success: strive to meet an appropriate temperature and that's 65 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit or 18 to 24 degrees Celsius. And your goal is really to maintain a consistent temperature. So ideally 75 degrees Fahrenheit to 24 degrees Celsius from the day you pitch your yeast to the day you bottle your wine. Also consider the temperature of the room you make your wine in. If it's colder, then you consider getting a brew belt, which is one of those blue belts you can stick around your primary fermenter. I've also heard people using the space beside their hot water tank or maybe even their furnace. So where that room is really depends on what part of the world you're in, and the type of room you have. Also, as I've mentioned before, low temperature can slow or stop your fermentation. So, above all, avoid adding your yeast until you get that temperature right. And in order to get that temperature right, you're going to need to get a food-grade floating thermometer. If you do not have one, do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Go to your local winemaking supply store and get one. So that way you can keep track of your temperature and record it at the primary stage, the secondary stage, and all the way throughout the process. And you'll be able to ultimately diagnose any problems you might have. Okay? So if you have any tips or comments to share about today's podcast, I invite you to email me at tips@helpmywinemaking.com. And I know people do also just respond to any emails that they get from me, and I'm happy to get those as well. So that's all we have for today. I hope you learned something new, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen. I've been getting lots of great feedback from everyone on the podcast, so keep sending them my way. If you're not a fan or a friend in Facebook, please do join me on fbook.me/winemakingguy, and also you can go to my blog, thewinemakingguy.com. And if you haven't signed up for my free 5-part winemaking course, please do. And of course, you can find me on iTunes as well in the podcasting section. So join me next week, where I'll be discussing what causes a wine to be stuck. And if you've been paying attention, you already know one of them. All right, have a great week, folks. See you next week. Bye for now.